He thought punching an old veteran was easy, until the veteran Special Forces family arrived and delivered instant justice. The fist came out of nowhere. Jake Harlan was drunk, loud, and looking for trouble that Friday night in the dim corner of Murphy's bar. The old man sitting alone at the end of the counter had said nothing, done nothing, just nursed a glass of water and stared at the faded American flag pinned behind the bartender. But Jake didn't like the way the old man carried himself. Back straight, eyes calm, like he still owned the room even at 85. It offended Jake's fragile pride. "Move over, Grandpa," Jake snarled, shoving the stool. The old man didn't budge. Jake laughed, a mean, hollow sound, and swung. The punch landed clean on the veteran's jaw. His head snapped back. The glass tipped, water spilling across the scarred wood. A collective gasp rippled through the bar. Phones came out. No one moved to help yet. They were frozen, waiting to see if the old man would fall. But he didn't fall. Harold Hal Whitaker slowly turned his head back, touched the corner of his mouth where a thin line of blood appeared, and looked up at Jake with eyes that had seen worse than a barroom bully. Quietly, almost gently, he said, "Son, you just made a mistake." Jake laughed again, louder this time, flexing his knuckles. "Yeah? What are you gonna do about it, old man?" Hal didn't answer. He simply reached into his pocket, pulled out an old flip phone, and pressed a single button. Then he closed it, set it on the counter, and waited. Jake mocked him. "Calling the cops? Good. Tell them to bring a body bag for you." The bar patrons shifted uncomfortably. The bartender reached for the phone under the counter, but hesitated. Something in Hal's stillness made everyone pause. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. The front door opened, letting in cold December air. 3 men stepped inside. They wore plain clothes, jeans, jackets, boots, but they moved like they owned the night itself. Tall, broad-shouldered eyes, scanning the room in a single sweep. The oldest, maybe 45, had a short salt and pepper beard and a scar running down his neck. The second carried the quiet intensity of someone who never needed to raise his voice. The youngest, barely 30, had Hal's eyes clear, steady, and kind. They walked straight to the counter. The bearded one stopped in front of Jake. "You hit my father?" Jake's bravado flickered. He looked at the 3 men, then back at Hal, who still sat calmly on his stool. "Your old man needed to learn respect," Jake muttered, but his voice cracked. The youngest stepped forward, placed a gentle hand on Hal's shoulder, and examined the bruise forming on his jaw. His jaw tightened, but his voice stayed soft. "Dad, you okay?" Hal smiled faintly. "I've had worse in Quezon, son. I'm fine." The bar went dead silent. Jake tried to back up, but the middle brother moved behind him, blocking the path without seeming to try. No threats, no raised voices, just presence. The bearded one, Captain Daniel Whitaker, U.S. Army Special Forces, retired after 20 years, looked Jake in the eye. "My name's Dan. This is my brother Mike, Delta Force. And that's our little brother Chris, Green Beret, still active. Our father served in Vietnam. 2 Purple Hearts, Silver Star. He never talks about it. He doesn't need to. But tonight, you put your hands on him." Jake's face went pale. The phones that had been recording now turned toward the brothers. Dan continued, voice low and even. "We could do this the way you think it should go. We could break you in half before you blinked. We're trained for it. We've done worse to worse men in darker places than this bar." Jake swallowed hard, sweat beading on his forehead. "But that's not what our dad taught us," Dan said. He turned to Hal. "Dad, what do you want us to do?" Every eye in the room turned to the old man. Hal looked at Jake for a long moment, really looked at him, not with anger, not even with pity, with something deeper recognition. He slid off the stool slowly, joints creaking, and stood face to face with the younger man who towered over him. Jake flinched. "I see it," Hal said quietly. "The anger, the hurt you're carrying. I wore it once too. Came home from the war ready to fight the whole world. Thought hitting someone would make the pain stop." His voice was soft, but it carried to every corner of the bar. "It doesn't." Jake's fists unclenched. His shoulders sagged. Hal reached out and placed a weathered hand on Jake's arm. "You're not the first man to swing at ghosts, son, and you don't have to be the last." The room held its breath. Dan spoke again. "Here's what's going to happen. You're going to sit down. You're going to let my brother Chris look at that hand you used because you probably broke a knuckle on Dad's hard head. Then you're going to listen while our father tells you a story. And when he's done, you're going to decide who you want to be tomorrow." Jake didn't argue. He sat. Chris gently took Jake's swollen hand, examined it, and nodded. "Hairline fracture. Needs ice and a splint. You'll live." The bartender brought ice without being asked. Hal began to speak. He told them about 1968, about a village in Vietnam, about a young Marine who lost his entire squad in an ambush, about coming home broken, drinking too much, picking fights in bars just like this one, about the night he almost threw his life away until an older veteran, a World War II Marine with shaking hands and kind eyes, sat down next to him, bought him coffee instead of a drink, and listened. "That man didn't judge me," Hal said. "He just saw me, and that was enough to pull me back." Jake stared at the table, tears slipping down his cheeks without him noticing. Hal continued, "I learned something that night. Real strength isn't in the fist. It's in the hand you offer when someone's fallen. My boys learned that too. They've been in places you can't imagine, seen things that would break most men, but they come home and coach Little League. They fix neighbors' roofs. They show up when their old man gets punched in a bar, not to destroy the man who did it, but to protect what's worth protecting." He looked at his sons, pride shining in his eyes. "They're better men than I ever was." Dan shook his head. "No, Dad. We just had you to show us the way." Silence fell, thick and sacred. Finally, Jake looked up. His voice was small. "I'm sorry. I lost my dad last year. Army, Afghanistan. I don't know how to be okay anymore." Hal nodded slowly. "I know that road, son. It's long, but it doesn't have to be walked alone." He turned to his sons. "Boys, help me get this young man home. And tomorrow, Jake, you come to my house for breakfast. My daughter-in-law makes the best pancakes in the county. We'll talk. No judgment. Just coffee and a chance." Jake looked at the three warriors surrounding him, not as threats now, but as quiet guardians. He nodded, unable to speak. As they helped him to his feet, Dan leaned in and said softly, "You messed with the wrong old man tonight, kid. But you just found the right family." The bar erupted in applause as the 5 men walked out together, 4 warriors and 1 broken soul beginning to heal. Outside, under the streetlight, Hal paused and looked back at the bar window where patrons were still watching, phones now lowered. He smiled, touched the bruise on his jaw, and said to his sons, "Worth it." Because sometimes justice doesn't look like a beating. Sometimes it looks like a hand reaching out in the dark. And sometimes the strongest thing a man can do is choose kindness when the world expects violence. That night, a bully didn't get destroyed. He got saved. And an old veteran proved, once again, that the greatest battles are the ones fought with mercy.